Chicago, Illinois, Startup Hype Man presents the Goat to Market Show. What's up, everyone? I am your host, Raj Nation, the founder and chief pitch artist of Startup Hype Man. This podcast is where we bring you founders, company leaders, and creatives who are building it, who are doing it, who have been there and done that. And they pull back the curtain on their go-to-market strategies so that you can build a venture that you love and become the GOAT of your industry. Want first listen on episodes before anyone else? Subscribe to our newsletter at startuphypeman.com. You will get alerts every Sunday morning when we release new episodes. All right, let's hear how today's guest is becoming the GOAT. Ladies and gentlemen, making her way to the microphone from New York, New York, and currently residing in San Diego, California. She is the Chief Creative Officer of ClickUp. Please welcome Melissa Rosenthal.
Thanks for having me. What an intro. I think the first time.
Now you got something to play you into every stage and every meeting you go into.
Love it. Great to be here.
Like I mentioned, she is Melissa Rosenthal, Chief Creative Officer at ClickUp. You've probably heard of ClickUp by now if you are at all involved or tangentially involved in the tech world. They have blown up over the last, I'd say, 4, 5, 6 years. To this point, most recently raising a $400 million Series C round at a $4 billion valuation. They have hundreds of thousands of customers. Perhaps at this point, you've even seen their billboards. They have popularized the phrase, one app to replace them all. And this journey of growth, of massive growth and scale, has largely been attributed to the fact, well, of course, the product is good, but on top of that, they have been able to drive 100x revenue growth by focusing on brand differentiation. So our conversation today with Melissa is going to be focused on brand development and differentiation. So Melissa, right off the bat, real quick, why is this on your mind and why is this important to you?
Yeah, so I've been a brand builder from early in my career, and I've always known that, there's a lot that can drive growth. There's product that can drive growth. There's shift in technology, shift in market appetite. But at the root of everything, you have to really have a strong brand to be able to grow and differentiate yourself, especially if you're looking to build that legendary 5-10-year brand. You can't do that with just product alone.
We're going to dive a whole lot more into this. Before we do, I want to learn more about you, the person. So, Melissa, I'm curious, do you have any siblings or are you an only child? And if the answer is siblings, where do you fit? And how do you feel that has shaped your view of relationships?
That's a great question. I'm an only child. So I think that has also shaped a lot of my way of operating and my style of leadership and management, and kind of everything I do, I think, has been really shaped by the fact that I had to make my own way constantly and teach myself things. And I never had anyone to really look up to see, oh, what are, that's how I should do X. So I had to kind of figure everything out myself.
Paving your own path since day one. Well, You've done a lot with music in your career, and you've actually brought music into ClickUp's brand in several different capacities. What is your favorite genre of music and favorite artist?
Oh, good question. I love indie rock, the whole genre. I would say 2 favorite artists would be Death Cab for Cutie and then Phoebe Bridgers.
All right. Death Cab for Cutie. They're not groups that I listen to. But I had a lot of friends growing up who were fans of Death Cab for Cutie, and I always just thought it was a fun name to say as a band.
Yeah, I would say Phoebe is definitely top right now. She's amazing.
Right on. So let's kind of talk through your career journey then. I mentioned the music thing, but media has really been where you got your foothold in, and then you helped grow BuzzFeed from almost like a niche website that certain parts of the internet knew about to a massive mainstream brand. Unfortunately, recently they had to shut down their news division, but that time when you were there, 2010 to 2013, that was when BuzzFeed was on the rise, on the come up. You were running the global creative and strategy there. Like what was the vision that your team had at BuzzFeed, and how did you bring that to life? I know that's a loaded question, but like when you take it, it's like, hey, there's so many news outlets that are out there that are already way more popular. We're going to come out, we're going to hit the scene, and we're going to bring people to our media platform instead. What was the vision?
Yeah, I mean, so when I started there were about 10 of us in a room, and it was a really small office in downtown Manhattan, and no one knew exactly what the company would become. Jonah the CEO had a vision to make it the one-stop shop where you could go where anything that was viral, anything that was relevant would be happening. And the idea behind virality and figuring out that there is actually like a real methodical way to create things that go viral based on, different kind of frameworks was the idea. Now, that was like the hypothesis, that you could repeatedly make things go viral and understand why people share with each other. But that wasn't something that was proven. So, it was a ton of experimentation, like every single day. So many things didn't work. And, it was really that, like, how do we become your internet best friend? Where like that is the place, you almost see BuzzFeed as that best friend within media, that you're going to go and get all of the most relevant content, things to share with your friends, stuff about celebrities, kind of that all in one, like one-stop shop. And that didn't exist before. There everything was kind of bifurcated. You had like gossip sites, which really didn't like speak to the reader, but BuzzFeed spoke to you like a friend. So I think that differentiation in the personality of like a website for the first time ever and media for the first time ever was something that really differentiated us. And yeah, over time, that kind of caught on, and we were able to really reach people in interesting ways. It felt like an overnight success at times for other people. And they're like, wow, BuzzFeed's everywhere. It's like the most popular thing in the world. And for us, it was like, years of experimenting to get to that point, and then finally seeing ourselves reflected in mainstream media or being mocked. And it was kind of such a surreal moment. But a lot of that was just the work of like that differentiation in our tone, our personality, our voice, our content, and then true experimentation across multiple platforms over many years.
One example of that, I'm curious if you would have been part of this team at the time. I think it would have been like 2012. So I don't know how big the company was at that point, if you would have directly been involved, but I think it was 2012. A friend of mine did the first ever BuzzFeed homepage takeover and proposed to his wife. It was the Say Yes Katie campaign, where he was able to essentially he took over the BuzzFeed homepage and coordinated with the team there and proposed to his wife through that.
That sounds very familiar. I wasn't directly involved in that, but that sounds like something we would have done back then.
It was a cool campaign where like everyone started making memes about it. And the whole point was to get her to find her way to BuzzFeed.com that day to see that the proposal was sitting there.
Yes. Wow. That's a blast from the past.
Well, and I think though that speaks to like the human aspect, right? Like I don't think any website to that point was allowing the reader to get directly involved with the asset like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we to start, we had a really strong, and how I got even involved in it was that we had a really strong community, and the community added so much to the site, so much personality, and they were constantly trying to outdo the editors. And that was this really fun gamified way of getting people involved. So there was constantly this leaderboard in which you could see how well your posts were trending versus the actual people that work there, which I thought was really special and super unique. And also, incentivize people to create better content to beat out the people that actually work there, which was really cool.
From BuzzFeed, you move into Cheddar, which has been often called like CNBC for millennials. And you joined, the company's doing 6 figures of revenue annually, and then you leave less than 4 years later and they're doing $50 million in annual revenue, and then very shortly getting acquired and then going public. This is, another media outlet, television though media, and I'd say more video-based media with some online assets as well. But did you basically go to Cheddar and be like, we're just going to run the BuzzFeed playbook at Cheddar, or was there a different type of challenge, given that this is a television network, I would say first and foremost?
So I actually left BuzzFeed to go help start Cheddar. So Cheddar didn't really exist before I came there. So it was an idea that that the old president had to create this media network that would be a live streaming network for young people who were interested in tech, and it would compete directly with CNBC and Fox Business. And I love the idea, and I said, yeah, absolutely. And the idea was kind of this culmination of two things that were happening in the industry that were really interesting. One was that the word cord cutting, which now is just ubiquitous across everyone. No, I don't really know people with cable subscriptions. That was not a thing. So we were starting to see this change in consumption, and we were starting to see that young people wanted to have choice in what they watched and not kind of directed by a cable bundle that was costing them way too much money. So obviously, now the things are, Netflix was already in existence, but we started to see the rise of competitive live streaming apps like YouTube TV and Pluto and Fubo and Philo and, everything that today didn't exist when we started Cheddar. We were starting to see it. So that was really exciting. It was like this major shift in streaming that we could become a part of. So for the first time ever, it was possible to get distribution on streaming services that had actually a young audience that would place you in the right places. So that was extremely exciting for us. So that shift in consumption behavior and also new channels was the one thing that we're like, well, we can win there. And then the second piece was that differentiation part, which was, hey, like everything on TV right now just speaks to this much older audience. The anchors aren't diverse. They're, it's extremely polarizing. There's nothing talking about like all these amazing things that are happening in the startup world and fundraising. And the stories of these young CEOs who are doing all these really great things and actually speaking to about finance to a young audience. So we were like, we could differentiate that way as well through the content, through the anchors, our branding was like a very bright pink and yellow, brand logo with a piece of cheese. I mean, like, we look different. We didn't feel masculine. So we were differentiated and brand through that way as well. And also through our advertising opportunities. So there were just a lot of different ways that we decided to differentiate ourselves, and through the shift in tech and the shift in consumption that really carried us alongside with the brand.
I mean, I think even the name alone, right? Cheddar, that's like a cool name to speak about cash. So I think on name alone, it starts to speak to a more youthful audience. Now, you go BuzzFeed, you help start Cheddar, and then like B2B SaaS, right? That ClickUp comes into the picture. What made you make that jump to say, I'm gonna do this kind of like left turn and go into a new category, a new arena?
Totally. So we sold Cheddar, and I decided that my future was probably not at a 15,000 person cable company. So I took a step back, and I wanted to think about what the next phase of my career was. And I'm a brand builder, and I love being creative, and I felt like I had always wanted to go into tech, and the opportunity within B2B SaaS specifically felt like the sky was really, really blue. And, I think there's a lot that kind of comes together to be able to do what you dream of doing, but the sky was really blue in the opportunity to actually differentiate a SaaS company in a creative, funny, humorous way that others weren't doing. And I love that. And I thought if, I could find the right company, which, that kind of fell out of the sky, but if I could find the right company that would be able to allow me to do that, not just say it, I would be really happy in the next phase of my career. And I could hopefully change the idea that you can still have a wonderful product and great product marketing, but still be able to sell through humor and through emotion. So, that's what drew me to the idea of it. I felt like every other time that I had done something in my career that I was successful at, it was because it was the idea of it being completely disruptive across an industry or across a period of time in which something hadn't been done. And I kind of go into it guns blazing, where I'm just like, I have to be fearless because, there's so much that like other people are dealing with that holds them back in the ability to do that thing, that if you think too hard about that, it will dissuade you from doing it at all. But I think for me, it was like, I'm going to find that early stage company. I can do the startup thing maybe one or two more times, and I'll find that company and I'll help them build an amazing differentiated brand through everything that I've learned in my prior posts.
So let's dig further into now, which is the main topic, which is how you've been able to drive such massive revenue growth by leveraging brand and brand differentiation. When you joined ClickUp, what was like this, like how many employees were they at? And how would you characterize the state of the company at that point? And what did you come in and say, here's what I want to do? Or what did they say, here's what you're tasked with?
Yeah, I would say maturation of the product was happening. Like the product was growing, or like without any sort of paid. They didn't even really have a marketing strategy. So it was pretty exciting to see a product that was just growing by PLG only. But when I came in, it was very early stage startup. It was Series A. It was about 60 people. And, there was this kind of aura of community around it. People loved the product. They loved it already. So kind of going into that, productivity is a really fun area. And then Zeb, who's the CEO, like his whole personality is so bright and so bold. And, the colors and everything that he was using on the website really also attracted me to the idea that I could come in and be able to do this here. So, it was very early stages. Nothing had been established. It was like, let's experiment with like who we are, our brand personality, our tone, like how we come off and market. And let's infuse that into every single thing that we do across social, across our performance advertising. And as we scale that up, let's really build that out. And so, day one, we didn't have a huge marketing budget, but we were starting to run performance ads. So infusing that creativity into the performance ads that we were running and starting to get that feedback and people starting to notice, oh, ClickUp's doing things differently. Oh, I wanted to watch that ad. Like that was something that I think in B2B really hadn't happened. I hadn't seen it ever. So getting that anecdotal feedback and starting to build upon that and upon our humor and how we approach things. And then also throughout the product, incorporating these like kind of fun elements of when you click a task, what happens, or an email that you get when you import everything over from a competitive product. There was that personality that was infused throughout that. And then obviously with marketing budget, you're able to do a little bit more and scale and create these amazing experiences and brand opportunities like running a Super Bowl ad. But from day one, it was like everything we do should be a little bit different. Like our weekly feature releases should have a song associated with them. Like how do we just infuse that into every little aspect of the company?
Well, I think that's where such a strong like media background comes in, as you look at, how do you make a show out of pretty much everything that you're, a show in air quotes here, right? But how do you make a show or showcase everything that you're doing? So it's not just, because I feel like, the standard path is we're going to send an email to our database that says, check out this new feature release.
Yep. Yeah. And like it's tried and true. And if you've done it for 10 years, like that's what right? So I was taking a lot of what I knew that others didn't and trying to infuse that into an industry that hadn't really ever had that sort of disruption. But the beauty of it is, our founder does not have that typical SaaS path either. So his willingness to be bold and try new things and be loud and punch up at our competitors, like I'm very lucky. Like there are many other people that would not have allowed me to do that in the way that I did it with my team. So it's all kind of the marriage of that. It's the willingness to take those big bets and those risks, in which he was very on board with, and was very supportive. So
with this idea of like, hey, everything we do needs to be different. Like,
yes.
Was your North Star just different, or did you have actual like metrics or specific metric categories you were focused on within this?
I mean, there's metrics and ROI across many different pieces of it, right? There's, if we're going to do an out-of-home campaign, it's brand awareness in certain cities. If we're going to run specific ads, it's like anecdotally, are people signing up for ClickUp and saying, I saw this ad or I did X, Y, and Z. And then it's the compilation of all that data in aggregate to kind of tell that story. But it's many different metrics across many different channels, platforms, methods of marketing.
Okay. So coming back to what you said before about like, hey, like there's like the tried and true stuff, like, send an email when a new product release comes out. I think on the note of the tried and true, as particularly as it pertains to B2B SaaS, the most experts are going to say, invest in SEO, invest in your blog strategy, figure out your product integrations, things like that. That's what I think is like the standard playbook. And I'm not saying you didn't do those things as well, but like when you were, you and your team are concepting out, like, how are we going to blow this out of the water? I got to imagine you weren't necessarily like building an internal pitch deck to the board being like, here's what our SEO, here's what words we're optimizing for on SEO, right? Or were you doing that? And then also being like, here's how we're going to make videos and this and this and this.
Yeah, I mean, my focus was much more on brand building. We definitely had a team focused on SEO and all of the tried and true things to build an organic machine on that side as well. Like that's also important. And I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying there also needs to be that, like, what is the true differentiation? And now we're at a place, how many years later, 2.5 years later, where I think SEO as an entire, way of marketing is going to be completely appended by AI. Mm-hmm. So, like, of course you do that, but brand humanization, like, look at where we are now. I think that we're at this kind of like really interesting point in time where that is going to be the only way you can really truly differentiate your content. Mm-hmm. Like when we have generative AI, like how do you do that when you don't have a personality or a brand? So I think it becomes more important now than ever. Not to say that those things aren't important. Those things will, SEO and it will change. But I do think that, that kind of building the brand from day one is something that, becomes invaluable when in a time of technology disruption.
So if you're speaking directly to, I mean, you really are with the audience of the show, but if you're speaking directly to, let's say, an early stage founder, somewhere seed Series A level, and they're hearing some of this stuff and they're like, that sounds risky.
Yeah.
What's your reaction or response to that?
I think it's not risky. I mean, I think it's risky not to do it. What are you building on in terms of a differentiated brand when technology has been democratized to the fact that someone can build the same product that you're building in 2 months, and your SEO strategy is now being written by, an AI bot that can auto generate itself and create its own prompts and respond to those prompts. So what war are you waging by not doing this? And it's really that you're not going to be able to differentiate yourself from anyone at certain points. Like even the best companies in the world with the most funding, look at Google. Like you can't leapfrog with product anymore. It's just like an arms race. So where can you also like build that muscle to be able to have the fuel to the fire when you're able to differentiate? And I think product and brand go hand in hand. Of course, you have to build the best product and leapfrog others in competition and keep building and keep iterating and evolving, but you have to build brand as well.
I want to dive into the voice aspect of this, but before we get there, I just want to pause for a second and talk to our listeners. Earlier on, one of the things that Melissa mentioned was that like when she joined ClickUp, like the product was strong and the product was growing. So listeners, I'm curious, like, how are you making sure that your product is strong? What foundation is it built on? Are you developing a SaaS? Are you developing an app that can actually like handle scale? And are you building it right from day one? Well, if you need assurance in that, Akeva is the software development partner that's going to help you go from 0 to 1. So whether that's blockchain or no chain, Web3 or Web2, mobile app, or something B2B SaaS like ClickUp, Akeva is here to build it at startup speed and enterprise level refinement. That's why startups like Stride Health, Haveno, Olive, Inside, and many, many more trust Akeva from their first dollar all the way to their $1 billion valuation. And they are ready to help you become the GOAT to market. Just in the last 2-3 weeks, I believe, I've referred 2 different founders to Akeva because they said, hey, we're about to bring on this big enterprise client. We got to make sure our tech doesn't break. That was a perfect use case for Akeva. Another one was, we are getting this thing off the ground. We need to make sure the software, we actually have software, right? Another great use case for Akeva. So wherever you are on your software journey, Akeva has the team, and their co-founder, Brandon, is also separately a tech startup founder himself. So he totally gets, and their entire team, it's infused into their philosophy. They totally get what it's like to build and grow a company, and they know exactly what the right moves are at the right time. So if you want to learn more, head to akeva.io. That's akava.io, akeva.io. Today on the Goat to Market show, we've got Melissa Rosenthal, the Chief Creative Officer of ClickUp, joining us, and we're talking about how they've driven 100x revenue growth through their brand differentiation. Now, before the break, I alluded to this. So, Melissa, as you build a brand, you've figured out a way to like hone in the voice of ClickUp. This is a two-parter. First part is how important is voice in building a brand? And then part two of that is how do you figure out what your voice is supposed to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think voice is really important. Like, how do you speak to your customers? How do you communicate through your product? How do you communicate in marketing? Like establishing that and what that means is really important. Now, I think like kind of experimenting it with it and then establishing where you want it to be. I would consider us like what we call like the heroic jester. Like we want to save you time. We want to make you more productive, but we can do it in a self-aware way where we can bring you in and have a humorous approach towards it. So that's sort of where I would say we are now. And getting there was just through a lot of trial and error. Not everyone, the beauty of kind of how fast you move as a company like this is you're constantly creating content. You're constantly seeing what resonates. You're constantly seeing what works on performance. So understanding that over time and then defining it is sort of where where it really actually happens. Now you can say my North Star is for us to be this, but once you are actually doing it, that's really where you learn.
And I mean, for those who aren't familiar, like you got to look up ClickUp stuff. They've released hip hop music videos, which of course, I would be a big fan of those things. They have put out like fake or parody, like movie and TV trailers, like they've done like a parody sitcom introduction to just talk about like the life of talk of going through the different departments, like accounting and finance and marketing and all that stuff. Right. It's almost like the Too Many Cooks thing that Adult Swim did a few years back. Like these are really creative ventures that they are building within the brand itself because they made that choice, as you said, Melissa, to be the heroic gesture, like have fun with this. So, and I think if you look back at like what you did at Cheddar and at BuzzFeed, there was also this idea of like, we're going to have fun with this. Do you think like it can be as successful if someone were to take the more like, let's say like serious or like stern sort of like brand voice?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's successful in kind of what way? Like there's I think still like Salesforce and the way they speak to their customers and the way that they have built their character arc and like their story and their narrative, like they're an enterprise company that still to me has personality. And I think like that's a cool and really great approach and a great reference point. I always reference Salesforce when people are like, are you going up market? Are you able to still have this humorous tone? And I think the answer is yes. If the product is strong enough and the differentiation is strong enough, I think that like you're able to have fun with marketing. And you see it more and more now. Like I see this across the board, like, more companies are coming out with like a little bit more personality in their ads and they're not all terrible anymore. And I've just started to see that over the past probably like 2 years. So I think there's kind of this acknowledgement that like your end buyer can laugh and also still want to buy your product. If your end buyer wants to share an ad with his boss that he saw that he thought was funny, like I think that's not going to take away from the fact that the product is very solid. So, I think there's a line of what your humor can be, but you can also have a lot of fun with it. And yeah, I mean, we've infused that from day one. Our strategy now is like, digital billboard strategy, which is like, let's just create great content that's also ads that people feel like is just enjoyable to watch, but it's also an ad. And also, why can't we create the commentary on modern work and all the things that we all resonate with and can have emotions towards, as well as just commentary on tech in general and what's happening. So that's the approach that we've taken. It's a bit of like newsjacking. It's a bit of infusing our take and our thought leadership in funny ways that tie back to our product.
I mean, that's probably been my favorite advancement of B2B over the past decade is the humanization of it. Because I was, like years ago, and I was just starting my career, like I was figuring out any way I could as a low on the pole in the company, being like, how can I make this more fun for my coworkers, for my customers, et cetera. And I remember even then, like, this is a decade or 11 years ago, 12 years ago now, like, the big thing was like our CEO was like gonna post a selfie for the first time, and that was like edgy.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I think to your point on the commentary, like what I really appreciate and what I think a lot of brands are starting to learn, but most still don't get is you don't always need to be talking about your product. And in fact, you shouldn't always be talking about your product. And if you don't talk about your product all the time, people will start talking about your product in a good way. Like the commentary on the industry, right? Like having a point of view on what's happening relative to a certain event or topic, right? These things where you just don't like the brand is there, but you're not like shoving product down people's throats at every single touch point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's enough marketing, and enough facets of marketing, go to market strategies where you are that within your brand and within some of your content, you don't need to do that all the time. So I completely agree with that. And as a byproduct of us talking about, making commentary on AI, we're also integrating it into our product as well. So let's create fun commentary on the fact that it's not going to take over. It's better if you work with it and, plug ourselves at the end. So there's just so many ways that you can speak to, what's happening within mainstream culture in a way that relates back to your product and your brand in a much smarter way than just saying feature all the time.
On that note, have you found over the past few years, I feel like historically product development is what's going to drive what the marketing and what the branding is. Have you found that through any of these branding and marketing efforts, has that influenced at all decisions made in product development, insights you've learned from the market through the top funnel stuff?
Not so much top funnel. I would say, it's more community boards. It's understanding the actual industry as a whole and where it's shifting, where remote work is shifting, what the needs are for visibility and collaboration. I'd say that definitely drives product more than top of funnel marketing. But I think they still go hand in hand. We were able to support that, and kind of take that and be like, all right, this is how we're going to think about it from a brand perspective. But yeah, I don't think the top of funnel stuff impacts the product, build as much as the actual ground up. Hey, this is what's happening in the industry, and this is what our customers want and need. To be able to support their teams and their visibility into their workflows and make it easier and more efficient.
On the other hand, have you heard any stories from the frontline sales team about their jobs becoming easier or changing at all because of what's happening with the content, with the promotion, with the brand?
I mean, 100%. When you have a strong brand, it's you get to see it at the table. People see our billboards. They've laughed at our commercial. They're able to use that in their sales outreach. They were like, oh, ClickUp, it's the ability to stay top of mind all the time. Right. Mm-hmm. So when one of our sales teams, is doing an exploratory call with a prospect, and all of a sudden they bring up a piece of content that they saw the other day that we created. We're renting space in someone's mind, and now they're making that connection, and now it hopefully will turn into a deal. So I always think about it that way. It's how do we always stay top of mind? And when you think about Geico, right? That's their entire marketing play. They spend billions of dollars. So sponsoring every major sports event, every major brand partnership, thousands of commercials. And why do they do that? To constantly stay top of mind. So the minute that you start to think about auto insurance or insurance, you think about Geico. Mm-hmm. So it's, we don't have the
and, Geico, I think everyone will tell you everyone knows the line, right? Save 10% in 10 minutes, right? That's the line.
Everyone knows the line, right? So I think there's the ability to do that in SaaS too. And especially when your TAM is so big, right? We are a solution for teams of, 10 or teams of thousands of people. So when you're trying to reach everyone, you really do need to stay top of mind to everyone. And also when you think about a lot of other people, if you get people excited that are young, that are entering the workforce, that then become the decision makers in 2 to 3 years, and they love your brand, they love your product, they're built in for life. So I think it's thinking about it in a longevity way too. How do you build that brand equity with people that are younger that will become the decision makers, 2, 3 years from now?
I got one more question and then we'll hit our wrap up. ClickUp is big and bold now. You have a massive user base, you have an established brand, you're dropping these things we talked about, right? Like the billboards, the music videos, the trailers with every product release, the parodies, the Super Bowl commercials even. Do you feel it was easier to take risks when the company was smaller? Or is it easier to take risks now that you've got people who've already kind of like bought into the brand and the user base is so large?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit easier to take certain risks now because there's not this, what are they doing? It's like, wow, they're doing this so well. So, I mean, as long as we continue to get that feedback and, we see that anecdotally, like we know we're on the right path. I think, we have an amazing creative team and we always kind of toe the line between like, how do we feel about this as a team? And we trust ourselves and we obviously trust the community and users and feedback that we get. But it is a little bit easier because we kind of have established what what our brand is, what our tone is, what our personality is, how we market the fun, funny videos that we come out with. So it's definitely a little bit easier now. I would say like large risks on a large scale might be more challenging. The Super Bowl was definitely challenging because we had to get a lot of buy-in from a lot of different stakeholders. That's such a big investment that deciding on what that's going to be and how it comes to life is not always easy, especially with just our internal team. But yeah, I mean, I think, because we've established ourselves already in market, it's a little bit easier to take those fun risks.
Let's begin our wrap up. First off, Melissa, where can our listeners find you? Where can they learn more about you? Where can they learn more about ClickUp?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on there. We cross-publish all of our really awesome brand videos, as you mentioned, across all of our brand platforms. So please check that out. And yeah, go to clickup.com. That's where the magic happens. ClickUp is an amazing tool. I wish I had ClickUp, years past for everything that we're able to accomplish as a team and as a company within our product. And I think dog fooding your own product is the best way to understand the pain points of others. So yeah, highly recommend ClickUp as an all-in-one productivity solution for your team.
Who is one person you want to shout out who's been influential on your journey?
Oh, you know what? Because this whole thing is about like risks and brand and believing, I'm gonna shout out Zeb because having a partner like that early on that believed in you and believed in the vision of what this could become, both from obviously he's a product visionary, but from a brand perspective, is I would say very unique and very rare. So shout out to him for allowing me to take these risks and bets.
We'll now do our top 1 or 2 lessons or takeaways for the listeners based on our discussion today. I'll go first, then I'll toss it to you, Melissa. The topic today was driving 100x revenue growth with brand differentiation. We talked about a lot of really good things. I think what I want everyone to go home with is the importance of having a voice and personality as a brand and knowing that and living that every single day. Melissa, top 1 or 2 lessons or takeaways for the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say be bold, take bets early on, and don't be afraid to punch up at your competitors. I would say that's, what's going to get you in the room next to them. You can do it in a smart way, but, these are the things that will make you stand out. These are the companies that become legendary. Everyone references Apple. Everyone references all these iconic brands. And what did they do? They thought differently about the things that they were doing on the product side and on the marketing side. So, everyone loves to put the Steve Jobs poster up in their office, but are they actually doing, are they actually thinking different about the stuff that they're doing? So that's the first takeaway. And the second takeaway is, like things are evolving so quickly. I would say to stay on the cutting edge of everything happening, specifically in AI and the way that it's going to transform the entire industry. I mean, AI is writing a lot of our ads. We're working with AI to create some of these funny ideas. And I think there's that magic between, humanity and also like machine learning that can create something incredible. So don't be fearful of it, embrace it and use it. And I think it's going to change the industry, every industry forever. So those are my 2 takeaways. And I would say use AI in a way that you can help differentiate yourself, not just kind of become the status quo.
My final question, which is how we end every episode on this show, fill in the blank, Melissa. Entrepreneurship is blank.
Disruption.
Say more.
Disruption over and over and over and over again. To be an entrepreneur, you constantly have to fire yourself, disrupt your industry, build and differentiate.
Entrepreneurship is disruption. She is Melissa Rosenthal, Chief Creative Officer at ClickUp. And if you have more questions for Melissa, if you were listening to this and you want to know more about AI, or you were listening to this and you said, oh, I really want to know how they figured out what their voice needed to be, or any other related questions, Melissa's hopping into the Goat to Market Club. That's our online founder community for the first week that this episode is live. And she's going to be doing an Ask Me Anything inside of there, taking your questions and getting an opportunity for you to get to know her better and getting those burning questions answered. So we've got an Ask Me Anything inside the Goat to Market Club for the first week that this episode is live. To join, guess what? It's free to join. And then your first month is free. And after that, it's just $9 a month. We're doing a ton of cool stuff inside of there. It is at startuphypeman.com/GTM-club. That's startuphypeman.com/GTM-club. That's to join the Goat to Market Club. We'll see you inside there. Shout out again to Melissa Rosenthal for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
That does it for this week's episode. Thank you again to our guest for joining and sharing their knowledge. Did you like what you heard? Well, leave us a rating and review on your podcast app before you head out of here. And while you're at it, who's one friend who you think would find value in hearing today's conversation? Go ahead and share the episode with them. I would really appreciate it, and I thank you for doing that. Remember, we've got more going down with our guest inside Goat to Market Club. Think of it like the after show, the after party, the after hours special. Our guest is going to hop inside the club and do an Ask Me Anything. So you can follow up with any of those questions that came to mind as you were listening. You can follow up and ask them to our guest inside our club. To join, just head to startuphypeman.com/GTM-club. startuphypeman.com/GTM-club. GTM Club is $9 a month, but your first month is free. You can cancel anytime, and you're not only getting the AMAs, you're also getting our monthly strategy drops that are for members only, where we're teaching hyper-specific tactical go-to-market strategies, plus cool member-to-member interactions and other bonus resources. All of that happens inside the club. So again, startuphypeman.com/GTM-club. We'll see you inside the club, and we'll see you next week. But before you head out, remember, why be a unicorn when you can be the GOAT?